is keeping healthy and staying well. Welcome to another One Soccer Hangout. I'm Asa Raymond, your host of today's One Soccer Hangout, joined by my colleagues Oliver Platts, Gareth Wheeler, and our guest today is the 2019 CPL Coach of the Year, the best-dressed manager in the league, coach of Cavalry FC, Tommy Wheeldon Jr. Thanks so much for joining us, Tommy.
Pleasure to be on, gents. It's a nice way to extend a very shortened season, isn't it?
That's right. It's always good to chat with you. And you continue our British Invasion Week here on One Soccer. We had Rob Gale on Tuesday. If you missed that one, be sure to check that one out. It was hilarious. It was good fun. Hoping to have some fun as well today. And I'm hearing that we might have Frank Lampard in tomorrow. So it should be a good week of guests here on One Soccer. Let's get right into it. Speaking of the home country in England, Tommy, the recent news out of Cavalry is that Aribim Pepple is on trial with Sheffield United. How did that come about? And is there any update on how he's doing?
Yeah, actually, it was interesting. As soon as we had announced that we'd agreed to the trial, and it was just close to the international transfer deadline, it was honestly, I'd never had so many calls about a certain player. And I think large part, the lad's got great potential. We can all see that. You know, I think sometimes even we all forget he's still 17. He made his debut as a 16-year-old away at Halifax and then against Montreal Impact. And then he's still growing into his game and into his body. And then as soon as that happened, we had, clubs from the Bundesliga, La Liga, Portuguese League, and more, Premier League clubs contact us. So actually, I think he's, with his dad and with his agent, they're just going to play it quite smart and get the right opportunity at the right time. I know there's another Premier League club that he's going to that we can't quite announce as well, that he's going to go to next week. So yeah, I think there's somewhat of a bidding war for the lad, but you know what? Like I said, I think he's now riding the wave that Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David have done, where they're setting a great precedent for what young Canadian talent can do in Europe. And having first team football now that the Canadian Premier League has presented, only heightens that.
Yeah, but do you think, Tommy, go ahead, Ollie.
Sorry, so just do you think he's likely to go somewhere, Tommy, or do you think he could be back next year, depending on how this all pans out?
Oh no, he'll go somewhere. I think there's so much interest in the lad. We won't see him back in Cavalry colours. That's something we've accepted and we support. It's all part of the journey of what we're trying to do for Canadian footballers, is give them an opportunity. And hopefully, like every other league outside of the top four in the world, we're export leagues and we have to be seen to be exporting our best talent.
I mean, do you think he's ready for it? Like, maybe not from never mind the playing perspective, just in terms of maturity. Is he ready to make a move like that?
Massively. The lad's so intelligent. Like he's such a mature man. And again, we get lost in the fact that he's still only 17 because he handles himself brilliantly. He's got a private school education. Both parents are doctors, so he's very well spoken, very well mannered. Got a great sense of humor about him, so he's got a maturity to him. But physically, he's we did some testing on him prior to leaving. He was like 4% body fat. He was off the charts in terms of his sprint ability. And I think just for him, actually, our season's ended. So, we've got a long off season here that he would be training in a gym. He needs to be training with players, with games. And the good thing about the European window is he's still got 6 months where he can actually still play U18 football. He could still play U23 football before he even steps foot on the first team pitch. So I think that's a great opportunity that is deserving of him.
But Tommy, he's not a player that was prominent in your starting lineup. He came off the bench to provide minutes for your team. Gareth, I'm curious to know, were you surprised when you heard that he was heading to Sheffield United for a trial? Were you surprised to see him go of all the players on Cavalry?
Not necessarily, because age has everything to do with it. And especially with Brexit right now, you want to get in those under 18 players. Well, you can that come from abroad. I'm not sure if he has papers to represent anywhere else. Does he?
Passport.
Okay, it's a non-issue. But I mean, you see this happening in club football. And Tommy, you can probably speak to this a little bit. Clubs want to get these players when they're younger. They're relatively cheaper. It's part of the business of the game. So that's why I'm not surprised when a young player like that goes on to have an opportunity elsewhere.
Well, he has time on his side. It's different. So, say a Tristan Borges last year that played a lot, was MVP. He's still young, 21, 22. Aribim's 17, so he still has those 4 years that within the right environment could really kick on. And again, like I said, look at what Alphonso Davies did in a short space of time. There's a rapid development curve in the right environment. So he's also got to find, an environment that he can go to. My brother likens him a lot to, my brother played in Belgium and he played against the young Romelu Lukaku. And he was raw like Aribim. And every time, you ask a Mason Trafford or a Zator or Jay about having to mark him in training, he was just a nightmare to handle because he just puts himself about so well. Listen, he needs polish. He's young. So what we wanted to do is manage expectations with him. And if we put him in too early, too soon, and too often, it might have beat him up a little bit. But we wanted to just give him a little bit of, like sugar lumps, we say, keep getting him motivated to do more because we wanted him to work harder before training in terms of, work on your first touch or your turn and shoot, finish with your left foot, cross with your right foot, different things that would actually polish his game. And if he felt he was in the first team too early, he may have gone, here I am. It's versus now, at the training ground, he was always, one of first on the pitch and one of the last to leave. And that's why I know he'll be successful wherever he lands.
Yeah, Tommy, you mentioned Dominick Zator, someone we talked about a lot last year. What are the chances of him moving on to a higher league after this Island Games performance from him? But some may question, wasn't up to the standards that he would have liked.
Yeah, he's got the ability, hasn't he? I think we all agree on that. My phone's always on, and that's the thing I've said to all our players when we sign them, and all our players and agents we know that we're in the business of competing. That we like to play winning football. We like to be challenging for everything. But we also know that in order for this league to grow, we also need to be a revenue generator for the selling of players, and Zator would fit that mold. And I'll talk with you. I mentioned this to Ollie that we almost had a loan to a purchase option with a championship club in England that fell through just because of we couldn't quite get the agreement or the expectations in place over the international transfer window. But that opens up again in the new year, and we'll certainly talk about it because we believe in the lad. But whilst he's my cup of tea, as my dad would say, he might not be everybody's. I want to have that athletic centre back that will carry the ball out, that can play as an auxiliary right back or right side of a three or in a back four. I like the universality of players, the flexibility of players. Some might want, a 6'3" Didic that's a stay-at-home big defender that can pass 40, 50 yards. Some might like, a Crutzen that's a left-footed one that can come out with a back and hit the long diagonals so well. Everybody's got their preference as centre-back. So, what surprised me, though, having seen some of the MLS, that somebody hasn't looked and gone, this lad's always available. Right. He would fit where we're at. Mm-hmm. That's what surprised me is I think, and he's shown it, in 4 games against MLS opposition and getting called in the national team. He's of that level, if not better than a lot of them, in my opinion. That's where the surprise that there's been no calls on that side.
Do you have any theories why on that front, Tommy? Because I don't know if it's like maybe to do with the salary cap there, that if they pay a transfer fee, it hits the cap and things like that. But it surprised me as well that there hasn't been more interest in Zator, Crutzen, guys like that. Yeah,
I guess it comes down to, I think, first and foremost, the 3 Canadian teams, what they've got on their roster at the time. When the Joel Waterman deal was done, they were looking for a player that had high passing stats, pass completion and breaking lines. So not just, most defenders now, they have more time on the ball than any player, so should have the most amount of passes, just the way in the modern game. But it's the ones that are able to pierce layers. And I think what Joel Waterman had, because we converted him from a central mid into a centre back, he naturally saw those passes. So he was able to do that. So when a lot of these data analytics are recorded, they look at that. But then you might get some that want repeated sprint ability, that, they want to play with a high line like a Liverpool. Mm-hmm. So you look at Dejan Lovren, he become victim of circumstance for Klopp's tactics because both, now Van Dijk and Gomez are athletically off the chart. So they can afford to have their defensive line in the opponent's half because they know they can cover. That's where Zats would fit. So I think there's a tactical element to it as well. So if you want to play with a high line, Zats is your man because he'll cover the space in behind, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you look at Zator and what he's done with the national team, and Ollie, you and Gareth have talked about this a few times in recent Hangouts, the expanded roster for the men's national team. Ollie, do you see him getting more minutes for John Herdman's side coming up in 2021? And should he?
Absolutely, with all the competitions that are going to be there, and if you have one squad for the World Cup qualifiers and one squad for the Gold Cup, then there's going to be CPL players in there, and I think he's right up at the top of the list. I don't know if I'd have him right in my first 23 right now, but he's not far off if he isn't. I wonder as well, I don't know what you guys think of this, but when I look at Davies and Larea and the way they're playing and fitting them into the team, could a back three maybe be a solution for Canada, where you have someone like Zator who's comfortable in that system on the outside of a back three, and it kind of frees up Davies as a wing back to be aggressive as he can be for Bayern Munich, and not have to worry so much about the defensive coverage there.
Go ahead, Gareth. I'll let you answer that one.
I don't think so. I just don't think that that's the way that Herdman wants to take things forward. And if you were to ask me now, the Davies debate where he plays, I just think he's going to play further up the field naturally. I just think that that's where the player prefers to play. That's where I think you'll end up getting the most from him. You can play him at left back when need be, but I don't think that there'll be a dramatic change in the way that team plays or the way that they're structured. I just don't see it.
No.
Do you think Dominick Zator can fit into a three-back then for the men's national team, Tommy?
Oh, 100%. His best ability is his availability. The lad, we played every single minute of the 10 games we had, and would have played the final. He's just that's where he is. In international football, you need availability. He's athletic off the charts, so he's durable. He's a very intelligent player, and also he's versatile. So. I know when talking to John Herdman about why he was brought in, was he liked the fact that he played in a back three. He liked the fact he played in a centre back and a back four. He also liked the fact that he could play at full back in a back four, which is, against the US, when you've got, Jody Morris screaming down here, who's just like a running back but can dribble, then you might need somebody like a Zator to challenge and compete with him athletically. So I think he can play. I think there's definitely a depth chart now that's emerging in Canada, which I think when you put out your list and you see how many players are now available, it's fantastic to see. So, it's important now that he's also playing, because before these camps happen, we've got to find a solution to make sure he's playing, because that's where players get sharp. And you've seen that in the Island Games, that there was a bit of rustiness about it. So you don't want that in the national setup too.
Tommy, it's a bit of a double-edged sword for you, though, having a player that can step right into the national team program, and considering how many international games there will be next year. We asked Rob Gale this on Tuesday, but how are you going about planning for the new season, considering probably a number of your players would be in contention for call-ups? It potentially could be a position where you might lose some very important players for an extended period of time.
Nothing that's new to me. if you look at what we did in the Island Games, we just listen. I think I made the joke about if Nasty was fit and available, I'd have played him. That's the life of being a coach, right? You have your tactics up there, you have your names, you have your team looks great on paper, but reality is it's played on grass. It's not played on paper, and you have to be able to adapt to the circumstances that emerge. And our situation was, we had wingers coming in Richard Luca and Jose Escalante, which would have made us better. Didn't come in. And then we had injuries to Cordova and Jose Hernandez prior to the week prior. So we're like, okay, what do we have? So then we just, I became a tailor and started messing with the formation to what suit the players on the pitch. How can we put our best players on the pitch? So I think if, a Zator and a Carducci and Elijah Adakubi gets called into one of these groups, brilliant, off you go, well done, that's part of it. We'll compete with what we have. We'll always challenge and make no complaints that we didn't have this or didn't have that. We've promoted the game, and that's our job.
Yeah.
But based upon that, like, are you looking to bring in players to potentially cover for those positions that you might lose players? Is that part of your recruitment?
Do you know what? In all fairness, we always like versatile players that can cover multiple positions. So I said that about Zator. You look at what Bruno Zebi added to us. You look at even Nico Pasquotti this year. Instead of just being an out-and-out winger, he played at wing back and an inside forward for us. So we have that versatility within the squad. But you always want to try and create. I always like in every single starting 11 position, if it's a 4-3-3 or 3-4-3, can you have a head-to-head battle and coverage in each position? And you do anyway. So that's, like I said, it's not nothing new for me or any of the other coaches, I imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot to look forward to in 2021. We're looking forward to a full season. Hopefully we can get to that and enjoy it. That's right, fingers crossed. But when you're reflecting on that, the Island Games experience, one that played out like a reality show for all of us outside the bubble, how would you assess Cavalry's performance at the Island Games?
I think we went on an emotional roller coaster, to be honest. Honestly, it was, I mean, this is my spiritual side that I think getting into yoga, where I just see things as a journey. And it was an incredible journey. I think when you look at, as coaches, we have to take our A license. We have to do, degrees or masters in this, that, and the other. None of those courses could ever prepare any single one of us for what was to unfold. And I know we'll like to talk about, coach of the year and things like that. I think every single one of my colleagues, credit to them for putting on a show in the current circumstances with life in a bubble, no preseason to think of. Reality is we had small group training. We had Zoom sessions for about 12 weeks. There was no contact until 10 days prior to leaving. So you only had a couple inter-squad games. So really, the first 5 games of the tournament would have been everybody's preseason. Right. And up until the final day, which was great excitement for the fans, you had all but one club almost get into the Final Four. So we made a great tournament of it. And personally, as a team, I think we played some incredible football given the circumstance. But I just think at the end, it felt like, we feel we could win every single game going. That's just the nature of who we are, no matter who's on the pitch. But I think it just felt like we were going into a chess match, and we had no rook, no king, no knight. And we didn't have the right pieces to actually make it. We had no attacking pieces other than Haber and Jordan Brown left, really.
Yeah. Well, injury is always a part of every season, every tournament, obviously. So I want to hear from Gareth and Ollie. Injuries aside, to complete the sentence for me, Cavalry would have won the Island Games if, Ollie, I'll go to you first.
Well, the one I look at in particular is Sergio Camargo, because I think, Tommy said it himself, and when it gets to those big games and they're very tight and very cagey, maybe you can get a goal off a set piece or a mistake, but what we've seen repeatedly is someone who can just kind of produce that bit of magic that breaks the game open. And I think Camargo is that guy. Like, I really like him as a player. I think on his day he's as good as anyone in the league in terms of being that creative attacking midfielder. But his health has been an issue, right? And he's been unavailable a lot. Sometimes when he's been available, it feels like he's maybe not fully fit or coming back from injury or something like that. And I just think that type of player, I think he is that type of player, and that's maybe what just Cavalry have been missing in those big games that are decided by one goal.
Gareth?
I'm going to be a little bit more straightforward. If Jay Wheeldon didn't pick up that first yellow card in the second minute against Halifax, it was one of the softest cautions, which then set up, obviously, is sending off, 9 minutes later, which I do think ended up being a cautionable offense. But the first one should have never been. If Cavalry doesn't go down to 10 men and concede 2 penalties against Halifax, they go on to the final despite the injuries. For me, Tommy, I don't know your sense of it, but like, if you come out with the result from that game, and if Jay isn't sent off, even though you're missing so many attacking players, I don't think any team fancies a one-on-one game against you guys. The way that you're defensively structured and built, like, honestly, in a one-off final, do you think that any team in this league would have fancied playing you guys, even with the injuries?
Yeah, I think we're as good as anybody on our day. That's for sure. I think Forge has had the upper hand on us, and because we've seen the semi-final with them, really what it was, and they edged us by what Ollie says, a moment of brilliance from a Becker pass to a Babuli clever finish. Last year's final, I still think it was decided by Tristan Borges having missed the penalty. That top corner goal, that was incredible after a bit of great play from Nanko on the wing. I mean, the finals, and I said this to our players afterwards, and we said, look, we need magic when it matters, because we had that when we beat the Whitecaps. We had that when we won the spring and the fall. We had magic over the course of a season. You give us any league table and we've topped them all. But sometimes you just need it in a one-off game. You need a bit of magic. And I agree with you. We felt confident going into that Halifax game. It did rock us, to go 2-0 down prior to half time. Then that really hurts you, because now you've got 2 goals to get up. It became an uphill battle. But what impressed me through that, Gareth, is the manner in which we played. Even Harty came off afterwards going, wow, we get the goal back in. We technically we outplayed them with a man less. That showed the ability we have. But just sometimes you need a little bit of luck. And look, we had our fair share. I'm not going to bemoan it. We got 5 penalties in the tournament. So we had it in different ways. But I agree. All I'd asked for in my post-match comments about that call was, my word, have some consistency. Because, afterwards, I think Regi did the pullback. He's done the foot high against Dean Northover and nothing given. And it was almost like there was a bit of things towards Jay that said, right, if we card him early, it'll settle down. I mean, there was never one. We had one against, Daniel Crutzon's rallied through, I think, one of our players in the game early, nothing given. That's just the nature of the game. So, right, wrong, or otherwise, absolutely, we had a chance, but that's the game. That's why we're addicted to it.
Yeah, I don't want to take this totally off on a tangent, but it reminds me of something that came up in a group chat after the Martial red cards against Tottenham and how that just changed the game. Guys started talking about potentially getting rid of a player leaving the pitch in that situation. So, he would leave, but not going down a man. I know we talk about rule. Yeah, I talk about rule changes a lot, but it is interesting when you have a player leaving a game early in a game as opposed to late in a game. Just the crime doesn't seem to fit the punishment necessarily in all these situations. Tommy, I want to get your thoughts on that. Basically, you still lose the player in a red card situation, but you don't go down a man. Is that something you'd be in favor of or be interested in trying?
Yeah, I've seen it at the youth level, to be honest. And I remember a game, even when I had the Foothills PDL side and we played Jeff's FC Edmonton, kind of their academy / lads that won in the first team. So I remember Sadi Jalali getting warned by the referee, and then he got sent off just before half time. And I remember saying, look, this is an exhibition game. Let's, lad can't come back on, but let's make a game of it, because because even the other way, it's not necessarily easy. We had it on the other side where, Tariq Mohammed got sent off against us and Edmonton rose their game. So it actually doesn't necessarily make it easier for the team with the extra man, because the others start playing up. It's a great rule. I think for anything that's maybe a violent conduct, I think you've probably got to look at something considered. But there's nothing wrong with reviewing what rugby do and have a look at a sin bin type scenario where you're down a man. It's like the power play in hockey. There is an element of value to it. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting subject. It'll take, I tell you, I'll leave you with this. It will take some doing to get to beat that red card after, what was it, 11 minutes?
Yeah, 11 minutes.
That's some forever first record for me, brother. You can imagine the Christmas when we're pulling our crackers and do a trivia card. Who's got the quickest ever red card in the Canadian Premier League?
Yeah, that was really all right. Tommy,
Wheels up.
Your coach of the year last year. Of the nominees this year, Mista, Stephen Hart, Bobby Smirniotis. Who should win the CPL Coach of the Year for 2020?
Listen, like I said at the start of it, I think I've got respect for every single coach in this league that have done it. And I listened to the Jeff one, and my heart goes out to him for being as honest as he was to say the type of pressure he felt with that and took it on. And he's a great individual to listen to, how Rob prepared with things. And that's a guy that is raising his 2 daughters very well. People don't see what's behind that. That leads them to the coach they are. It's a support system. I have mine, and I thought Pamadou Carr should have deserved a mention in there, because I thought he turned Pacific around and they were terrific to play against them. Probably the one game where we go, man, they totally outplayed us, and that comes down to him, his tactics, and what he'd added. I think he should have been in the conversation personally. That being said, it's got to be Bobby. I mean, the guy's won back-to-back North Shield trophies. So what more does he have to do to be coach? Finish second, finish runner-up. The guys chose tactically 2 different types of teams in different settings and won in them. So hats off to him. He should pick it, and rightly so.
Anyone have anyone else to say? I feel like Bobby's the one too.
The hipster Ollie will argue against it because he believes that awards shouldn't go to winning teams.
No, the opposite is true this time.
Yeah. Sorry. And I'd also say I like what Harty did. Harty, it suited his his background being a national team coach in a camp format, and he really knew how to get results out of it. And I thought credit to him, because at the end of the season, where he'd finished last, I remember him coming out and saying, he was trying to negotiate new contracts, and we're all in that place now where everybody wants these pay rises. Like, we finished in last place, and he took the balls to say, right, you know what, I'm going to gut this squad and I'm going to rebuild, and he finished second. So
it was
credit to him too.
Yeah, there's a lot of contenders for sure. I don't just say this to be nice, but I was genuinely impressed with all the coaches at the Island Games. But it's got to be Bobby. 2 championships. The way he's kind of handled his team in those big games, kept the opposition guessing, which I think has been a really smart way to handle things as well. Can't argue against him this year.
All right, we're just about out of time. I want to get this one in before we do go, though. You guys started chatting about it on Tuesday with Rob Gale, and I want to get all of your answers on this. First to you, Ollie. What is the biggest story in Canadian soccer right now?
It's the year ahead for the men's national team for me. Not to diminish anything on the women's side, but they've already been there and done it, and they're established as a world-class team. I think the men's national team has the opportunity to get there, or to get up there over the next year. There's massive opportunities in front of them when you look at the number of competitions, but there's still these question marks about what it's going to look like and whether they're going to be ready. Can they get camps in before they start playing games? Can we get fans in Canadian stadiums to actually make the most of these big games that we could be playing and really build the profile of the men's team in the matches we have? So, I know John Herdman's as meticulous as they come, and he's going to be doing all the preparation and planning that he can do. But there's a lot of things that are out of his hands right now. And I think, it would be a shame if a year that has the potential to be so big for this program maybe falls a little bit flat because of the ongoing health situation, or because the team doesn't really have the time to prepare for the big matches ahead.
Gareth, I'll go to you next.
Yeah, I don't know how it's anything other than that. I know we've spent a lot of time speaking about individuals in the past, whether it be Sinclair, Davies, David, etc. But now it's about the collective. How is Canadian soccer going to come out in a positive place from this COVID pandemic, and how that manifests itself on the field in what could be a huge year for the Canadian men's national team? Look, like World Cup qualifiers are going to be huge, but it's also the potential for our under 23 group to qualify for the Olympic Games. I don't think the importance of that can be understated. These are the players that are going to take us forward into, into 2026 in a home World Cup. So those are the two things that are clearly on my radar. But what I hope is that the infrastructure is still there for all the smaller clubs and the development of young players who have really lost essentially a year of football. Doing individual training, small-sided work, that's fine. But all of these players across this country haven't played competitive games. So let's hope that things get back to normal. We can see our best young players go out there and do what they do best. Yeah,
that's right. Tommy, I'll give you the last word on this. What's the biggest story right now in Canadian soccer?
Women's football. And I say that because I've got full confidence in what John Erdman can do. He's a brilliant man. He did a brilliant thing with the women's side, getting on back-to-back podiums. He's very strategic in what he's going to do for the men's to get us the FIFA funding to keep making this game better. We've got the Canadian Premier League that now are creating that depth chart. But let's not forget, we've got a world-class individual in Christine Sinclair coming to the end of hers. We've got a three-peat UEFA Champions League winner in Kadisha Buchanan.
Yep.
But we've got nothing here, no resources. So once that wave's done, we can't keep going like that and lopsided. And right now, men's football take over. Now, suddenly then we start investing on women's again. We've got to find a balance that says, look, let's get this league off the ground for the women. Let's give a pipeline, because we don't even have a women's national team boss either. So let's not forget about them. They need our attention too. And this game, we all collectively grow stronger if we grow together.
Very well said. Great players, great Canadian players right now. A lot of them are playing overseas, though, and we should be continuing to develop them right here in Canada. Well said. Thanks so much for coming on with us today, Tommy.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, gentlemen.
Yeah, always good to chat with you as well. I want to thank Armin Vadakian for his work behind the scenes, and producer Con for setting up this show. Make sure you subscribe to One Soccer if you haven't already. It's the home of the Canadian Championship. Till the next Hangout, take care and stay safe.